Welcome to the Thrive Experience, an exploration in how you can find peace and happiness in your chosen profession, as well as facilitate a thriving workplace for your team or employees. Researched and brought to you by Brian Thomas and Lisa Brooks. Thriving and finding positive meaning in work is both a personal journey for employees and an imperative for employers and leaders. Multiple factors must intersect in order for employees to find their work meaningful and thrive within a work environment. The goal is happy employees who contribute in meaningful ways within their chosen organization. The question is, are you happy? And depending on your answer, there are things you can do to change your situation. The study of positive psychology, the scientific study of the strengths and virtues that enable individuals and communities to thrive. The field is founded on the belief that people want to lead meaningful and fulfilling lives, to cultivate what is best within themselves, and to enhance their experiences of love, work, and play. Researcher Sean Aker gives us an introduction.
7 years old, and my sister was just 5 years old. We were playing on top of a bunk bed. I was 2 years older than my sister at the time. I mean, I'm 2 years older than her now, but at the time that meant she had to do everything that I wanted to do, and I wanted to play war. So we were up on top of our bunk beds, and on one side of the bunk bed, I had put out all my G.I. Joe soldiers and weaponry, and on the other side were all my sister's Milos and ponies and ready for a cavalry charge. There are differing accounts of what actually happened that afternoon, but since my sister is not here with us today, let me tell you the true story. Which is my sister is a little bit on the clumsy side, and somehow, without any help or push from her older brother at all, suddenly Amy disappeared off the top of the bunk bed and landed with us crash on the floor. And I nervously peered over the side of the bed to see what had befallen my fallen sister, and saw that she had landed painfully on her hands and knees on all fours on the ground. I was nervous because my parents had charged me with making sure that my sister and I played as safely and as quietly as possible. And seeing as how I had accidentally broken Amy's arm just 1 week before, heroically pushing her out of the way of an oncoming imaginary sniper bullet, for which I have yet to be thanked. I was trying as hard as I could. She didn't even see it coming. I was trying as hard as I could to be on my best behavior, and I saw my sister's faces wail of pain and suffering and surprise, threatening to erupt from her mouth and threatening to wake my parents from the long winter's nap for which they had settled. So I did the only thing my little frantic 7-year-old brain could think to do to avert this tragedy. If you have children, you've seen this hundreds of times before. I said, Amy, wait, don't cry, don't cry. Did you see how you landed? No human lands on all fours like that. Amy, I think this means you're a unicorn. Now that was cheating, because there's nothing in the world my sister would want more than not to be Amy, the her 5-year-old little sister, but Amy, the special unicorn. Of course, this was an option that was open to her brain at no point in the past, and you could see on my poor, manipulated sister's face conflict, as her little brain attempted to devote resources to feeling the pain and suffering surprise she just experienced, or contemplating her newfound identity as a unicorn. And the latter won out. Instead of crying, instead of ceasing our play, instead of waking my parents with all the negative consequences that would have ensued for me, instead, a smile spread across her face, and she scrambled right back up onto the bunk bed with all the grace of a baby unicorn. With one broken leg. What we stumbled across at this tender age of just 5 and 7, we had no idea at the time, was something that was going to be at the vanguard of a scientific revolution occurring 2 decades later in the way that we look at the human brain. What we had stumbled across is something called positive psychology, which is the reason that I'm here today and the reason that I wake up every morning. When I first started talking about this research outside of academia, out with companies and schools, the very first thing they said to never do is to start your talk with a graph. The very first thing I wanted to do is start my talk with a graph. This graph looks boring, but this graph is the reason that I get excited and wake up every morning. And this graph doesn't even mean anything. It's fake data. What we found is if I got this data back sitting you here in the room, I would be thrilled, because there's very clearly a trend that's going on there, and that means that I can get published, which is all that really matters. The fact that there's one weird red dot that's up above the curve, there's one weird in the room, you know who you are, I saw you earlier. That's no problem. That's no problem, as most of you know, because I can just delete that dot. I can delete that dot because that's clearly a measurement error, and we know that's a measurement error because it's messing up my data. So one of the very first things that we teach people in economics and statistics and business and psychology courses is how, in a statistically valid way, do we eliminate the weirdos? How do we eliminate the outliers? So that we can find the line of best fit, which is fantastic if I'm trying to find out how many Advil the average person should be taking, too. But if I'm interested in potential, if I'm interested in your potential, or for happiness, or productivity, or energy, or creativity, what we're doing is we're creating the cult of the average with science. If I ask a question like, how fast can a child learn how to read in a classroom? Scientists change the answer to, how fast does the average child learn how to read in that classroom? And then we tailor the class right towards the average. Now, if you fall below the average on this curve, then psychologists get thrilled, because that means you're either depressed, or you have a disorder, or hopefully both. We're hoping for both, because our business model is if you come into a therapy session with one problem, we want to make sure you leave knowing you have 10. So you'll keep coming back over and over again. We'll go back into your childhood if necessary, but eventually what we want to do is make you normal again. But normal is merely average. And what I posit, and what positive psychology posits, is that if we study what is merely average, we will remain merely average. That instead of deleting those positive outliers, what I intentionally do is come into a population like this one and says, why? Why is it that some of you are so high above the curve in terms of your intellectual ability, athletic ability, musical ability, creativity, energy levels, your resiliency in the face of challenge, your sense of humor? Whatever it is, instead of deleting you, what I want to do is study you. Because maybe we can glean information, not just how to move people up to the average, but how we can move the entire average up at our companies and schools worldwide.
Aker posits that the outliers, those who find happiness and meaning within their work, must be studied or emulated in order to raise the bar for us all. The meaning of work. Traditionally, work has had three components. Either it contributed to the economic maintenance of your family, or it allowed you to have a positive impact on your organization, or it was a form of self expression. An alternative perspective on the meaning of work is follows. Some people can derive different kinds of meaning from most any job or organization or occupation. There are three dominant orientations toward work. People who view work as a job, focusing on the material benefits of work. Work is a means to a financial end that allows people to enjoy their time away from work. People who view work as a career, they work for the rewards that accompany advancement through an organizational or occupational structure. And finally, people who view work as a calling. They work not for the financial rewards or for advancement, but for the fulfillment that doing the work brings. Calling orientations. There are positives and negatives to those who see their work as a calling. Overall, those with a calling orientation have a stronger and more rewarding relationship with their work, which is associated with spending more time at work and gaining more enjoyment and satisfaction from it. However, this work orientation is rather static. Those who view their work in this way are a select group that cannot be joined by others who view their work differently. So what should you do if you don't view work as a calling and you would like to find job satisfaction and be able to thrive within your workplace? There are steps that you can take in order to do that. And the main thing those steps are called is job crafting.
Hi, I'm Gretchen Spreitzer, and I've been studying what enables people to thrive in their work for about the last 10 years. The biggest insight that we've had in our research is that in order to thrive, people need to experience two things. On one hand, they need to have a sense of learning, or growing or getting better at what they're doing. And on the other hand, they also need to feel energized and vital about what they're doing. And it's the juxtaposition, those two things coming together, that enables people to be thriving in their work. So now, what can you do so that you are more able to thrive in your work? Well, what we found in our research is that people are more likely to thrive at their work when they co-create 4 sets of resources. The first resource is more meaning, work that has purpose for you. The second one is deeper relationships, or what we call high quality connections that are created in the doing of the work. The third is better affect, more positive affect, having fun, more laughter and smiles in the doing of work. And then the fourth resource is about having more knowledge, learning new things, trying out new ideas, taking some risks. And when people are co-creating all 4 of those things, they're more likely to be thriving in their work. And 2 pieces on that. One is that I, as an individual, am enabling more of those things, but also that I'm in a work environment that's creating and reinforcing an environment that allows those 4 things. And if you want to learn more, you can look at the January 2012 issue of the Harvard Business Review, which has a piece that summarizes this body of work.
So, job crafting. With this, you ask yourself certain questions. How can you change your outlook on how you're working and what you do to find more enjoyment within your job? So, what can you do to think differently about the ways in which you work or about your job in general? You would also ask yourself, how can you change your task boundaries? What things can you spend less time on and work smarter instead of harder? What new opportunities can you look for within your job description? And how can you reach out to others who are within your organization? Which leads us to, how can you interact differently with the people around you on your chosen job? Or what can you do to work with new people within your chosen profession? Now on to the organizational lens. While job crafting perspective concentrates on the things people do to change the boundaries of their jobs, it also offers an organizational lens on the meaning of work. While crafting is most often observed on the individual level, it grows from an organizational context and expresses itself within a community that will respond to crafting actions in ways that create more possibilities in the work, which is the aim of the positive psychology perspective. Or an organization can inhibit such actions from occurring in the future, which would limit people's ability to be able to thrive within their workplace. There are positive possibilities for creating a happy work environment. In our next clip, researcher Sean Aker will talk to us about creating that happy work environment by pulling our goals and our ideas of happiness back from the future and pulling them into the present by pulling them back from the cognitive horizon.
What does a Harvard student possibly have to be unhappy about? Embedded within that question is the key to understanding the science of happiness. Because what that question assumes is that our external world is predictive of our happiness levels. When in reality, if I know everything about your external world, I can only predict 10% of your long-term happiness. 90% of your long-term happiness is predicted not by the external world, but by the way your brain processes the world. And if we change it, if we change our formula for happiness and success, what we can do is change the way that we can then affect reality. What we found is that only 25% of job successes are predicted by IQ. 75% of job